Welcome, everybody. This is episode 1 of the Upon Pillars of Sand podcast. My name is Spencer Harris. This is my father, Spencer Sr.
To understand how we lost this country or how we can save it, we must understand how we lost it first. So please bear with us because we're going to cover some things that the government should have taught us and they quit teaching for over 50 years ago. Civics, how our government is supposed to work.
The American experiment was the establishment of a government founded upon the ideals of self-governance. Central was the concept of natural rights that come from God, and governments cannot legitimately infringe upon them. Popular sovereignty, whereby governmental authority originates from the governed, was another guided principle. The result was a republican form of government, unlike any other in the world embodied within our Constitution.
Our Constitution, according to the National Constitution Center, is indeed a legally binding contract between the government of the United States and we the people. We also have within our system separation of powers doctrine. Pay particular attention to its importance. When one branch of government does what another is supposed to do, there is no longer any check and balance.
Do we really know who checks whom? Congress has the power to impeach the president, so the legislative branch checks the executive branch. The president can veto what Congress passes, and the judicial branch also checks the constitutionality of congressional laws through judicial review. Who checks the judiciary? It's we the people, and like separations of power doctrine, it's built into the Constitution itself. We will cover this in more detail as we go.
When we searched the history of American law, we found it odd that our system began with colonial settlement and the English common law system. No mention of the Revolutionary War and the establishment of self-governance. A government like no other was simply an extension of the system we overthrew. This omission is how they change history. The first principle of self-governance is to control the laws by which you are governed. This is why the legislative branch is in Article 1. Not because the branches of government are equal. They are not. The chief executive is still the chief executive, and it's why the president is the most powerful person in the world. The first step in controlling laws is to limit who has the power to make laws. Hence, the first sentence of the Articles of Confederation, Article 1, Section 1, says, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States consisting of a Senate and House of Representatives. Only Congress can make laws. But Congress is further limited to what they can legislate by Article 1, Section 8, to 18 specific parameters. These 18 parameters may be limited even more within the body of the Constitution, and we may point that out as we go.
Whatever you believe about the Civil War, the day Lincoln ordered troops into Virginia, the country has changed forever. Slavery was a key topic of the day, especially since the United Kingdom freed their slaves with the Slave Act of 1833. The king purchased all slaves throughout the kingdom, gathered them to areas where they could be educated, trained in needed skills, and after 5 years, released them back into society as a free people.
The most overlooked aspect of self-governance is that it only works for virtuous people who respect the rights of others, because there are very few laws. The unconditional release of slaves due to the Emancipation Proclamation happened immediately after the surrender at Appomattox. 4 million uneducated, untrained, untethered, and unprotected ex-slaves were released into the war-torn South. The Constitution no longer worked because the process of making law was so slow, and ex-slaves were in immediate danger. This is where I point out that Lincoln caused this problem, killed 623,000 plus Americans in the process, and we put him on Mount Rushmore to perpetuate the lie that the Civil War was somehow righteous.
We mentioned judicial review earlier, and it was established in Marbury versus Madison in 1803. Since we the people are responsible for checking the judiciary, let's do a judicial review of our own.
There are two primary legal systems throughout the West: the common law legal system and the civil law legal system. So let's see how they stack up against Article 1, Section 1. We really don't need to go any further than the primary source of law for the two systems to determine that the common law system violates Article 1, Section 1, and it violates separation of powers doctrine. And it established that the only completely unelected branch of government is the primary source of laws. The 3 other countries listed as having common law legal system are part of the United Kingdom. The kingdom we overthrew. And of the 4 countries with civil law legal systems, 3 overthrew monarchies. The common law legal system is clearly unconstitutional today as it would have been in 1787. Many lawyers today will tell you that this system is what the founders established. If so, what else did they decide while they were drunk? If you actually believe this was what the founders did, then the entire Constitution comes under question. So our legal system was indeed changed at some point. We no longer have a functioning legal system. One leg of the three-legged stool of government was corrupted over 150 years ago. The judicial review we just did just eliminated 150 years of case law and laws of precedence. And Congress has been operating illegally for about the same period. Leg two of that stool is also corrupted. Once this corruption is acknowledged by the president, we simply demand it. The initial steps to secure the government are the responsibility of the president. Chief Justice Roberts will have an opportunity to make something up, but the president can read. Once exposed, the usurpation cannot be ignored. Frankly, the president doesn't respond. Congress would have to impeach him. And I don't think he'd let that happen. The president has the authority and responsibility as the chief executive to suspend Articles 1 and 3 of the Constitution, arrest SCOTUS, have the Speaker and VP recess both chambers, invoke the Insurrection Act, and instill martial law until the Constitution can be restored and a new elections held. We did this between 1783 and 1787 when we didn't have a government, and as the founders predicted, we must do it again. Because the Biden administration did what Lincoln did by polluting our culture with illegals, they must be removed. However, this is where I appeal to the president. For years, we heard Republicans say if we close the border, we'll discuss pathway to citizenship. If we've allowed illegals to stay for more than 10, 12, whatever years, and they've assimilated, they should be allowed to become Americans. If they help us evict illegals, they choose to be American. If they help illegals, they choose to go with them. The country will need to heal, and this seems to be the place to start. Before I go any further, I can already hear the moans about how this president is so bad. First, he was elected by a majority of voters. As such, he's the only person that can do what is necessary. Please put your TDS away and understand that if you don't support this one man that can help, you're choosing your own destruction. We are also nearing the tribulation. God's got this, so get behind the person he's put in place and do what's necessary. He's not perfect, but neither is any other president or person. By now, I hope you understand that he's been under assault from the very people they want to keep us controlled. Enter the Judicial Act of 1869 that led to the creation of the DOJ between 1870 and 1875 and surreptitiously changed a legal system that gave the government immediate control. There was never any plan to change it back because in 1878, the American Bar Association was established and law school curricula with it. Everything was in place for a judicial coup. Let's see what our government did with this newfound unconditional power. A staple of common law legal system is sovereign immunity, a legal doctrine holding that a government, federal or state, cannot be sued in its own courts without its explicit consent, originating from the concept that the king can do no wrong. In other words, the government of, by, and for the people has now a law that protects the government from the people. The Judiciary Act of 1891 ended the right of automatic appeal to the Supreme Court. More laws meant more cases, and SCOTUS now gets to choose what to hear and what not to hear. This didn't bode well for the blacks in the Deep South after separate but equal doctrine in 1894. 60 years and not a case heard about Jim Crow. The founders knew the weakness of the civil law system was the lack of juries. So they included in Article 3 that the trial of all crimes, except for impeachment, shall have juries. 100%. Today, less than 3% of criminal cases have jury trials. They just let the lawyers, who are beholden to the judge in this system, decide. The Seventh Amendment allows for juries for cases valued at more than $20. The present value of $20 from 1791 is less than $700. But somebody changed that value to $75,000, and less than 1% of civil cases today have juries. Not an amendment in sight. We, the people responsible for checking the judiciary, have been effectively locked out of the courts. You can't even pick a defense counsel that's not a member of the ABA unless you're willing to defend yourself. It didn't stop there. Our government decided to start collecting income tax with the establishment of the 16th Amendment. I say established because there is a question as to its ratification, and the wording of it says your money is the government's money, and they let you keep what they decide. Here's the punchline. Our founders were so adamant about keeping the government from seizing personal property that there is simply no way the government can establish a system that isn't voluntary. This is where I get to mimic Andrew Jackson. Congress has made their ruling. Now let them enforce it.
So we talked about the government enforcing their own ruling. So how would they enforce the tax system in this country?
Well, let me explain the tax system. It's really unique because the founders were so adamant about making sure that the government didn't seize their property that it's almost, well, it is, as far as I can tell, pretty much impossible for the government to actually administer a tax system that's not voluntary. Let me explain. The first step is filing a tax return. Any law that requires you to give information to the government that they can use against you in a court of law violates your Fifth Amendment rights. You don't have to give them a tax return. There's their first problem. There's no law today that says they have to give them a tax return, because if there was, it would just be thrown out of court. It's unconstitutional. So the next thing you worry about is, well, won't they just seize your property? Well, the Fourth Amendment kind of makes sure that doesn't happen, because they're supposed to secure your property, everything that you have. That's the government's responsibility. And the only way they can get it is to charge you with something so they can take you to court. So either they're going to take you to a criminal court, in which case, what crime did you commit if you're not required to file a tax return? Or they can take you to civil court, in which case, okay, you say I owe you this, now I say I don't. And this is why. Now, again, they don't know what you owe them technically, because they don't know what your exemptions are, because they can't go into they're not supposed to go into your bank accounts and do all that stuff and see what you've done, who you donate to, what your exemptions are. If you give them that information, they'll use it against you. Don't give them the information, it puts them in a trick. So, well, what about, if just seizing your property, they don't know what your tax exemptions are. That's problem number one. So they're going to go to court and say you owe you something. They'll spend their day in court with every citizen in the country over taxes, doing a tax return. It's a ridiculous thing. So, and then there's a W-4. Now, the W-4 is the key part of the grift. The W-4, you go to work and you say, oh, you're very honest. You're going to say, well, I have 2 kids and a wife, and so I got 3 exemptions, whatever you put down on there. And then they withhold your taxes accordingly. That's your permission slip to the government to withhold your taxes. By withholding your taxes, when you're early on in your career, you generally get money back because you don't make enough. They just withhold your tax. They train you to file a tax return, and you get your money back. Then when you get older, you owe more money. And so you fill out a tax return, and then you owe. Well, now you say, well, I've just signed this document, so I owe them the money. So you feel obligated. And then you have to, then you feel, well, and they know what I owe them, so they're going to throw me in jail. Fear. You're afraid of the government and the IRS. Well, the reality is, all you have to do on your W-4 is give yourself enough exemptions so you never withhold anything and never file a tax return again. You'll get letters at first, but eventually they'll quit writing letters because you ain't filing, and they have nothing to go after you with. The tax return and the tax process is the biggest defrauding of American people. It makes organized crime blush. It is absolutely ridiculous how much money they've taken for no reason. The average tax rate in this country is 14.5%. We can do a lot with 14.5% more of our income. We wouldn't have as much debt. Might be able to put money away for our retirement. Might do a lot of things. We're going to cover some other things in this system as we go on, where you're going to get more money back because the government is doing things that they shouldn't do. Anyway, I'm going through it myself, so I know. For my 2021 tax return, they say due to penalties and interest, I owe them $13,451. Okay. I did just what I told you to do. And in doing so, they write me letters now every 60 days. They tell me they don't need anything else from me, but they need another 60 days. I am now on 11 months waiting on my next 60-day letter. Eventually, they'll quit writing me a letter. And it'll all go away because they will never put me in court. That's the reason I'm doing this podcast, is because they won't put me in court where I can make these arguments. So here we are. We have a decision to make, and God has cleared a path for us to make it. The usurpation of the Constitution after the Civil War establishes a starting point for our new government. Every case law and law of precedents are no longer laws at all. Everything Congress has passed since the war must be reevaluated for constitutionality. We have been given a great gift because we can have a redo before the tribulation and perhaps avoid the mark of the beast, but it won't be easy. Our entire system is designed for controlling the masses. AI likely enhances that control. When the Antichrist emerges, the mark will follow. And today we have the opportunity to dismantle it. I suppose we should start with the Social Security numbers. The only reason for Social Security numbers is FICA tax, to invest in Social Security and Medicare for retirement. But Congress has already stole from that fund, and we're threatened every year that those programs are running out of money. Just end it. The average tax rate in this country is 14.5%. FICA is another 8%. The average American will get 22% increase in their take-home pay, and many others much more. We can prepare for retirement ourselves with less debt. Social Security numbers are on everything and must be removed.
Man, there's a lot of personal information the American people have floating around out there.
Yeah, it's another failure of our government. The Fourth Amendment places the onus of protecting personal information squarely on the government. It says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches, etc. Instead, we have every social media outlet like X, Facebook, Google, etc. not only storing our personal information, but they're selling it. Government contractors like Palantir store and collect information for the government as well. All must be deleted. They had to really stretch to make it even sound constitutional, but a centralized money system is just asking for the mark. We must return to the Treasury system. I'm no expert on CBDCs either, but I'm not a fan of cyberspacing my money. The builder must become the protector and deconstructor of the system he admitted was rigged. If we can do this, we can avoid the mark. We'll be subjected to the other calamities, but we have a fighting chance without the mark. In Revelations, the eagle, believed to represent the United States, is mentioned just 2 or 3 times, depending on the translation. And in Revelations 4:7, the eagle is one of 4 living creatures surrounding God's throne. In Revelations 12:14, where 2 wings of a great eagle fly into the wilderness, where the woman believed to represent Israel. And in Revelations 8:13, that depicts an eagle or an angel, depending on the translation, flying in mid-heaven to announce 3 impending woes upon earth's inhabitants. 53 years ago, I was a senior in high school working in a law office as part of a work-study program. The only thing I remember about the experience is the day the lawyer sent me to the law library to research a case. I'd never had a civics class, nor had I read the Constitution. I was alone in the library, and I opened a book and started to read when somebody or something told me something was wrong with our legal system. A lot has happened in those 53 years, and I know that I wasn't told for what I could do at 17, but for what I can do now. The lies the world has told us are long and distinguished. At the top of that list is Western Christianity and any Bible that evolved from the Council of Nicaea. Constantine omitted and or destroyed key scriptures to increase control of his subjects. In 1945, 52 books of Gnostic Gospels were discovered in Egypt. In 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in Jordan, and the Ethiopian Bible emerged in the West during this 20th century. We are told that we must seek truth. So if your pastor is still telling you Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, ask if he or she has read the book of Mary Magdalene, or the book of Jubilees, the book of Enoch, the book of Judas, and many others. Edward Casey, the sleeping giant and devout Christian, once said that the spirit world, truth has its own frequency. Not Christ has his own frequency, but truth. Live in a world of lies, and truth defeats lies, just like light defeats dark. Christ is not in a church pew, but in your heart. Every time you lie or accept a lie, your heart hardens because you are denying truth. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father in heaven. Matthew 10:33.
This is probably a good place to wrap it up. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, we've shown how the government has built a system of control around an unconstitutional legal system, and that our president has the constitutional responsibility to restore the Constitution. We are not a virtuous society, and if we ever want to live under the Constitution again, we must learn to be. The fabric of our society is under duress by millions of illegals who were purposely led in to do just that. They must go, so please say the misplaced parables. God is culling who gets into heaven. We should cull who don't belong, those who don't belong as well. Soldiers in the streets are for our own safety and to support local law enforcement. They will be in the streets until we learn to live together. Think of them as training wheels for a self-governed society. State legislatures and conventions of states will establish new amendments as needed. Watch them closely. I know God is. Thank you for watching. I just have one thing left to do. Satan, by the power invested in me by my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I hereby cast you out of the United States legal system. President Trump, you have the controls.